So good morning, good evening, and good afternoon. As Nancy mentioned, we have about 50 different countries signed up, so we always love to view our global audience. My name is Susie Ellis, and I'm one of the team members at the Global Wellness Summit and also the Global Wellness Institute. I want to welcome you to our Wellness Masterclass. This one is entitled Delos Shares Evidence-Based Strategies for Healthier Schools and Buildings During the Pandemic. And this is our last Wellness Masterclass for the year. Nancy will tell you more about that because we have our upcoming Global Wellness Summit happening next month, just a few weeks away. I don't like to say that in front of Nancy. She gets nervous.
Panic.
Just a few weeks away in November. And then we'll take a break for the holidays and start again in January. So before I turn it over to Nancy, who is our Chief Creative Officer and Executive Director, and also the moderator extraordinaire of our Wellness Masterclasses, I like to always mention something a little personal that has to do with the people who are on our call today. And so that means you, Paul Scialla. I don't know if you remember when we first met, but it was a while ago. I know that you began Delos, I think it was in 2009. And that was about the time we started our Global Wellness Summits. And so I guess in some ways we were pioneers, but I have to say, I really credit you with what you have accomplished because it's amazing. I mean, you are global, you have done so many different things. And we're going to hear about some of them today. But, you know, the one line I always remember, and it's, I know on your website too, but it really resonated when I first heard it, is that 90% of life is spent indoors. And that's a good reason to pay really good attention to what we can do for indoor spaces for a healthier world. But the one personal thing I wanted to mention, Paul, and I don't know if you remember this, but you and I are both twins, correct?
That is correct, yes.
That is correct. And I am an identical twin, and I don't remember if you are identical or fraternal.
Identical twin, 4 minutes apart.
4 minutes apart. Well, that is the thing that we have in common. My sister and I were more like 20 minutes apart. I don't know how that happened, but we are
your
both.
Poor mother.
I know. So 4 minutes sounds like a more normal thing, but we are identical twins. And, you know, that's been kind of cool for me. I imagine for you too, because you work with your brother, right?
Oh, yeah. Talk to him probably 50 times a day.
So that's been a special blessing. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Nancy. You're going to do a more formal introduction, but I just wanted to share that because that's something Paul and I have in common that is special. So Nancy, over to you.
Thank you, Susie. Before a formal introduction, I'll do my usual very quick Zoom instructions for everybody and for those who may not have ever called into one of our master classes. Beatrice has muted everyone and she's going to keep everyone muted because with a big group, we need to eliminate background noise. So listen and enjoy. There are two ways to view the call. If you want to see all of the faces in this beautiful mosaic, top right of your Zoom window, choose the gallery view. But if you want to, and I urge you to, see larger on your screen the people who are presenting, choose the speaker view. It's a very good way to experience the presentations you're going to hear. On the right side in the center, there's a little blue arrow. If you scroll that, click on that, you'll see all the pages of faces, which is wonderful, and you'll find your friends. Bottom center, there's a chat button. Most of you are familiar and are already using it. That's where we'd like you to pose any questions you might have for Paul and his team. We will do our best throughout the call to look at that window and grab those questions and pose them later in the call. The chat, as well as the actual video, is all recorded and shared afterwards. And what we've been asking our masterclass participants to do is answer the questions that have been posed in the chat that we don't get to. So don't worry if I don't ask your question to the group, it will ultimately get answered. When you're using the chat, please be really careful not to click on the bright green button right next to it that says share screen. That could be incredibly distracting. Okay, now it's my pleasure to introduce this group. You know, one of the most important issues being discussed every day all around the world is how to keep children safe and in school. When I started reading in the news about what Delos was doing about this, I called Paul and said, you have to do a wellness masterclass and talk about this. So Paul and his colleagues will tell you what they're doing in this arena. Suffice it to say that in August, the New York City Department of Education selected Delos to provide air purification systems in the city's public schools, which serve over 1 million students, which is really, really remarkable and very important. And I have to say, makes me very proud to know that big companies in the wellness industry are stepping up and making technologies like this available. And I'm also personally grateful because my granddaughter's in preschool in New York. You most likely have heard of Delos and its powerhouse founder and CEO, Paul Scialla, from myriad innovations in the wellness, real estate, and community sectors. Maybe you use the well building standards in your projects. Whatever you do in the wellness world, somewhere at some point, you came across Delos. Because in addition to everything they do well, they also know how to do marketing. We're going to send you the full bios of these very accomplished people when we send you the follow-up email. I don't like to take up the call with bios because you can all read them. We'll also send all the links and information that's mentioned. So don't worry if something comes up and you don't catch it, we will send it all along. Including, by the way, the contact information for each of these people if you want to reach out directly. And I'll tell you from personal experience, if you email Paul Scialla, you will get a response within 30 seconds and you can clock it. Absolutely amazing, no matter how busy he is. So here now, Delos founder and my friend, Paul Scialla.
Thank you, Nancy and Susie, and thank you guys for the great work you guys continue to do. And yeah, it's been a long journey, and I remember lots of conversations early on, and it's been really wonderful to watch the platform that you guys have and continue to grow. Amazing work. And thanks for the kind words. Pleased to be joined by my colleagues, Isaac and Jay, who you'll hear from. So guys, what we're gonna do is I'm gonna go very quickly. If I talk too fast, someone put your hand up, but just want to get a lot of information in. We'll give you a broad overview of Delos and our International Well Building Institute, and then zoom into this topic of schools, particularly air filtration technologies that are highly scalable, highly effective, and highly affordable. So we're encouraged at the solutioning approach here. Once again, thanks guys for the opportunity. Welcome everybody to zoom out. Delos has been merging the health sciences with the building sciences for about a decade. Our first several years was pure research. We took an evidence-based approach to look to connect our built environment with the human condition. As Susie mentioned, over 90% of our lives is spent inside. Right now, it's about 99% of our lives, and hope that reverts a bit. But, you know, our homes, offices, schools, hotels, what have you, and we've all heard this stat over the years. What we did first is actually put about $100 million of our capital together on pure research. We pulled in Mayo Clinic, Cleveland Clinic, over 300 medical practitioners of different disciplines to work directly with architects, engineers, owners, operators, developers, all types of real estate folks, HR professionals, facilities managers, to understand what surrounds us indoors and the direct link to our health outcomes. So guys, we studied everything that we could imagine surrounds somebody inside. Air quality, water quality, lighting, thermal, acoustics, biophilic elements, surface and cleaning protocols, HR policies, operational guidelines, and mapped all of those directly to our respiratory, cardiovascular, immune, cognitive, digestive, and sleep health outcomes, among others. And the ensuing body of work after a 4 or 5 year period was put forth in public peer review, led by Cleveland Clinic, and that ultimately became known as the Well Building Standard. We administer the Well Building Standard through our subsidiary, the International Well Building Institute. Over the last 5 years since launch, the International Well Building Institute has become the world's largest and leading certification body for healthy buildings, with certifications now in 63 countries, actually 64, I believe, as of this week, approaching 1 billion square feet of real estate, either certified or registered to be well certified according to the Well Standard. This is everything from Fortune 500 corporate headquarters, core and shell office towers, hospitals, schools, stadiums, hotels, restaurants, warehouses. Basically, if it's got a front door, it can be certified. Existing buildings, new buildings, master plans, communities, doesn't really matter. And so this evidence-based approach gave structure to this notion of wellness real estate. Interestingly, I remember writing the 3 words wellness real estate down on a napkin over 10 years ago. And now we read articles about the wellness real estate industry. So it's pretty fascinating to see that we played our part in bringing kind of science and evidence to and structure and allowing people like Susie and Nancy to do great research on the topic of wellness real estate. So, to get practical here, we also do many other things. After the standard was established, we brought in great leadership. Rick Fedrizzi, who was the founding chairman and CEO of the U.S. Green Building Council. That was LEED program. Rick put LEED into 194 countries. Mr. Fedrizzi came over 3 years ago to run the well building efforts, and we're just seeing incredible adoption, millions and millions of square feet. I wake up in the morning and see the reports from Asia and Australia and Europe, what have you. But it's a global thing. It is a global movement. It's got an evidence-based, performance-verified outcome for healthy spaces. So that was kind of chapter 1. During the 5-year period that Well had launched and started to grow, at the parent Delos, we went further, zooming in on specific products, solutions, technologies that are all good health interventions for the built environment. Anything from ultrafine particle filtration in air and water, circadian lighting, green wall technology, and even smart healthy automation. Our Darwin platform, which is a wellness brain for a home, for a hotel, for an office building, what have you, kind of a play on the IoT complex. But specifically, guys, what everyone is focused on is this obvious change. This pathogen concern has disrupted everything. We don't need to tell you guys that. It's interesting because when you have been studying, and you'll hear from our team, ultrafine particle filtration for air, for the last 4.5, 5 years, understanding the size of a pathogen concern like this and effective technologies to filter it, you put yourself as a platform in a good position to help and to solution. And we'll go through our process there. But if we zoom out for a second, I would say 2 things. What happened earlier this year created an understanding and awareness of one very simple thing for everybody, that what surrounds us matters. What we touch matters, what we breathe matters, how we gather indoors matters, the lighting that we take in through our circadian optic nerve determines our energy levels and sleeping patterns. But the acute concern, the health safety kind of shock that we've all seen, because our real estate is and will be the largest carrier of a pathogen concern like this, okay? We have an airborne viral load to consider, a surface-borne viral load to consider, and a behavior or behavioral-borne viral load. Our buildings matter, our homes, offices, schools, hotels, what have you. And, it's interesting because that's been the fundamental science of the Delos platform for a decade, understanding the relationship between the built environment and the human condition, or better said, between you and what surrounds you. And so this unfortunate circumstance has also shed some light as to, again, a very simple awareness. And if we zoom in even further regarding air quality, I would say a year ago, if you looked across the globe, the developed world at least, okay, you would certainly think that probably 1 out of 100 people had an opinion or a care or a concern or any knowledge of indoor air quality, okay? You probably will struggle to find anyone in any corner of the world right now that doesn't have an opinion or a fear or a concern or knowledge of indoor air quality. That number is now over 99 out of 100 people, from 1 out of 100 people in 1 year. A drastic change. And when you consider the size of the real estate asset class, and I know Nancy will love putting metrics to this, but $220, $230 trillion asset class, it has been disrupted all at once with an inevitable need now to focus on indoor air quality and filtration and go way beyond traditional PM 2.5 metrics, which were really kind of geared towards outdoor pollutants and how they leak and seep into buildings. COVID particles, for instance, SARS-CoV-2 particles are much smaller. So let's get down to the specifics in terms of how we're looking to solution this for schools, but really any type of indoor space. Our work starts with a product agnostic approach. We have combed the industry for years, all types of manufacturers and products and technologies, large and small. We looked at every methodology there is, whether it's UV lighting or bipolar ionization, electrostatic precipitators, the various ratings and filter ratings, what have you, HEPA, MERV. It starts with understanding what are we dealing with here. SARS-CoV-2 particles are down to 0.08 to 0.14 microns in size. What we've been able to solution are devices that are portable, wall-mounted, or standalone. There are also induct and inline solutions that filter 99.97% of an airborne viral load down to 0.007 microns. That is considerably smaller than the pathogen concern. Super high efficiency. And here's the best part. Incredibly affordable, incredibly scalable, can be put into any building. You don't need to worry about air handling units. And when you consider the New York City Department of Education, and by the way, guys, we're having conversations in Chicago. We've already sent product to Miami-Dade, to Boston, having conversations in LA, big school systems, small schools, one at a time. We will help one classroom at a time. Okay, we've gotten ahead of this from a supply chain standpoint. And here's the good news. These products are, you know, in the neighborhood of $300 a device. Okay, plug it into a wall. It's about a 40-watt light bulb charge. It's the size of a small fan, and you've got 99.97% reduction at great coverage area. There are smaller, there are larger coverage area products and smaller, but that's really what rings true here. Consider a classroom. I'm sure everyone's thinking, well, you know, this is an interesting way to approach this if you can actually scale it. And what New York City DOE had said to us after seeing probably 100 different solutions, we said, look, we are a product vetting engine. We are a standard bearer first. We are here to give you an evidence-based opinion on anything you're looking at. We'll also make suggestions. These particular Delos, in partnership with Healthway units, what New York City said, and you guys will be really excited to hear this, was, after seeing everything, this is by far the cheapest, by far the most scientifically effective, and by far the most scalable solution that we had seen. And that led to an initial order of 10,000 units, followed by 20,000 units and more to come. And you know, at this point, we're really just looking to put this out to as many folks as possible. This is not a sales call, by the way. This is an info call. Every one of you guys, I'm sure, has interest in restaurants, hotels, your living room, your kid's school. This is really to be somewhat encouraging that there are actionable solutions here that are practical and can work. And at least looking at the airborne viral concern of this part of the issue, and COVID-19 will come and go, as will COVID-25. But the awareness level is up, and that is generally, we believe, a long-term very good thing, because it will lead to better health outcomes when we get out of this mess of a life or death type of situation for some people. We'll just move back to the understanding that 19% of all chronic disease, long-term, is caused by respiratory ailment and inputs. And indoor air quality is generally 2 to 5 times worse than outdoor air quality. So indoor air is key. It's a fundamental pillar to overall health and well-being. And I'm really proud to introduce some incredible folks. Isaac and Jay from our team. They're going to give you guys a good sense of our process, what this type of solution is all about, and hopefully some of this information is helpful to you guys. And glad to be here with you guys again today. And Nancy and Susie, thanks very much.
Paul, thank you so much. And just before Jay and Isaac start, I just want to say that this may not be a sales call, but there's a lot of interest in what you're talking about. And so we will send information afterwards for people. Some people have schools, and some people have businesses where they're very interested in this. So we will be sure to get that information to everybody. I just wanted to let people know because I'm getting privately messaged.
Great, Nancy. Okay. Isaac or Jay? Jay, who's up, guys? Look forward to hearing your session.
Jay, do you want to take it away from here?
Just have to unmute bottom left.
And I believe Jay's calling from China. Isaac, do you see Jay? Does he have connectivity issues?
I do not see.
He's been here. He's been here early, so
good. Why don't we do this, Isaac? Why don't you
I'll jump in. Why don't we do that, and then we'll talk a little bit about the Delos Labs group.
Great.
Go from there. Thanks, Paul. Nancy and Susie, thank you very much for hosting us today. By way of introduction, my name is Isaac Mulvihill. I work as a vice president within the Delos organization. A lot of my work focuses on products, more commercially oriented, really identifying different innovative technologies that we can utilize within the Delos organization, which essentially underpin various programs within Delos, whether that be, again, hospitality, residential, commercially oriented. Really often the focus becomes looking at a holistic wellness ecosystem. But as Paul mentioned, there's been a glaring need in the world over the last 6+ months for a specific wellness intervention that really focuses on infection control, especially from an airborne transmission perspective. And I credit our Delos Labs group, and Jay can talk about this when he comes back online, but really understanding that this virus was airborne very early on, recognizing and taking some learnings from SARS-1 and other airborne viruses. And we understood that air purification was a critical element to reducing transmission indoors. I think it's important for us to recognize once again that we are a product agnostic third-party evaluator of various technologies. Ultimately, we're a standard bearer first. We're a health and wellness organization. And with that comes a responsibility to remain open to different technologies which deliver health and wellness benefit, especially as this industry continues to innovate and bring new products which can be used in a variety of situations. No two buildings are alike, and that means in many instances we're looking at different types of technology to implement in the infrastructure of a building, or quite literally right next to people. So we recognize as Delos, and again as a third-party evaluator, there are so many products on the market today that make different claims. Some not always living up to what their true benefit is. So from that perspective, Delos Labs, our labs team, becomes so important in evaluating different technology. And that's where Delos becomes a validation engine, in many instances a provider of solutions. And in this case, obviously, a provider of a solution which directly focuses on airborne viral load and viral contaminants. To help schools in this capacity is obviously an extraordinary benefit. What's been pretty wild for us in communicating with a lot of departments of ed is they've been thrust into a world that, in many instances, they just do not understand. They've really been asked by their community to become infection control experts. And that's a very difficult proposition to suddenly, turn education experts into infection control experts. And so in many instances, we are a foundational element to really support these school districts in identifying technology that truly has a health benefit and that they can implement in a scalable, affordable fashion. I'll get a little bit into what we did with New York schools specifically and what we're doing with other school systems, and really talk about the technology that Paul had mentioned. When we're looking at these various schools, especially in the Northeast, and cities like Chicago, cities like Boston, cities like New York, the infrastructure of these buildings is so variable. You have buildings from the early 1900s. You have recently built buildings. So we're working with an array of HVAC systems, an array of ventilation systems, and we work very closely with the schools to understand what their needs are and how they want to implement different solutions, especially when it comes to the air purification technology. So as Paul mentioned, we've really been evaluating ultrafine particles and the chronic condition really that ultrafines deliver into the body, really born from inflammation, recognizing that ultrafine particles have a propensity to penetrate lung cells more easily and again cause that inflammation and cause chronic conditions. We were seeking technology which was proven to remove ultrafine particles, especially recognizing that a very bright light has been shined upon the pandemic or on ultrafines because of the size of coronavirus being between 0.08 and 0.14 microns. So what we want to do is understand, first of all, device efficiency. What are we implementing into this room, into this classroom, near where students and staff congregate, and how effective is it at removing aerosolized particles that is born from respiration? We've seen many different technologies, as Paul mentioned, from UV to ionizers that don't necessarily remove particles or aren't as efficacious or efficient as what we would expect when they get put into a real world scenario. So what we want to do is identify technologies that's truly delivering that benefit of removing aerosolized particles. And that's where we came across the technology known as Healthway, our partner, an electrostatic precipitation device followed by a mechanical filtration mechanism. What happens is particles enter that system, all localized within the device, enter the system, and they become negatively charged. That causes the particles to agglomerate. They form a larger particle, and it makes the downstream filter easier to capture those particles. Secondarily, and very important, the actual filter itself is charged in a positive manner. That makes the negatively charged particles more attracted to the filter media, and it makes the device overall far more efficient all the way down into an ultrafine particle range. So the testing results we have seen, the value that this system provides is extraordinary. And again, one of the most important factors for us is actually implementing these solutions near where students and staff congregate in the classroom. In many instances, we're comparing this to induct MERV-13 filtration, which is, it's not as efficient, obviously, in capturing smaller particles. And when we think about an airborne respiratory illness, we would rather have a device localized right near where students and staff exist. So we're pulling respiration-borne particles out of the air immediately versus them going through the ductwork.
Excuse me 1 second, Isaac. I just want to let you know that Jie is back. If that is, he did get kicked out of the Zoom call, but he is back if you want him to take anybody through some of the technical stuff. And it does feel like an incredible science class. So thank you.
Excellent. No, look, that's a high level detail on the technology. Ultimately, we're here to wrap my segment up and kick it over to Jie. Ultimately, we're here to support schools in any way that we can from a health and wellness perspective. Again, being a third-party agnostic or taking a third-party agnostic approach to evaluating technology. We have provided our support in the communication efforts to students and staff, to parents, to really understand the value that this product offers and the value that Delos offers as a health and wellness company. So I'm sure there will be questions about the technology itself. I'm more than happy to answer those. But in the meantime, I'll kick it over to Jie to talk about our Delos Labs group.
Yeah, sorry about that. I was kicked out for a while and just joined. Thanks, Paul, Isaac. I think the background is very important to know the solution first, right? To know the outcome first. And here, I think I want to talk about and share what are the actual impact we can make using what we are doing with our solution, right? What is the role of school environments in our general public health. So from the science to solutions, then to the impact. So let's start with some basic facts. As we all know, there's 56 million students from K to high school in the United States. So that's a large body of vulnerable populations in terms of public health concerns. And between May and September, the infections rate, the incidence of COVID for adolescents is actually twice of that of younger children. That's another fact. However, we actually don't have, I mean the scientific community actually don't have conclusive understanding of whether children are more likely to transmitting COVID-19 to transmitting to others, or they're less likely. So there are competing evidence for that. Some suggesting children have significantly greater viral loads. Some suggesting younger children are less likely to be transmitting COVID-19. So science is still advancing on that. We don't have conclusive evidence. However, we do have very clear, the scientific community and medical community have very clear evidence and knowledge on how they're spreading in schools. As Paul mentioned earlier, 3 major ways: through behavioral, close contact, meaning the droplets from your sneezing, coughing, and speaking. From surface, right? If you have the virus, you touch something and someone else is touched after you, then touch their mouths or nose or eyes, then it can be infected. So those 2 are well understood, but also equally important, and maybe more important, through the air. The virus has been proven can be suspending in the air for hours in the form of small particles in the aerosol. So that can it can stay even longer if the room's air is not ventilated well, or there are more people in the same space. So these are the facts, and these are the very well established common sense in the scientific community. And as Paul mentioned, and also there was a New York Times article, I think a couple of days ago, a lot of schools, especially New York school districts, are doing a lot of great measures to addressing these issues. But many of them focus heavily on behavioral policy and surface. These are I guess, publicized by media, and people are talking about it: face covering, social distancing, smaller classrooms, a protocol of quarantine, and cleaning the surface all the time, hand sanitizing. But what we believe a missing link or a weak link in school environments, or in any environments that has a lot of occupancy rate is high, is how to address the airborne transmission. That's the focus. That's a weak link in a lot of our public spaces. So let's dive into airborne transmission a little bit more. Even before COVID-19, there's plenty of evidence showing many types of viruses can be transmitted in the built environment through ventilation system or through air movements between people and people in the classroom or in spaces, such as measles and tuberculosis, chickenpox, influenza, flu, smallpox, and SARS. So the evidence of using built environments as a vehicle to preventing, or the built environment is poor, so enabling the transmission of virus, is well established. It's being studied for a long time. And finally, in I think a couple of weeks ago, CDC has followed WHO and many other scientists and finally recognized in their new guideline that COVID-19 can be spread through air and can be staying in the air for hours and can travel beyond 6 feet of social distancing. So that fact of acknowledging by CDC is a big deal, because a lot of policies and measures of schools and many places should follow and have to follow CDC. So that's some good sign for there. And so what's more important in schools is schools occupancy rate, meaning per square foot, how many people per square foot, is typically 4 times more than other types of buildings. So, right, that's common sense. Students are sitting together. It's likelihood of getting airborne particles suspending in the air and travel in the air, through the air to person is much higher because of that density. So that makes school environments even more critical and even more dangerous. So what are the ways? In theory, to remove or deactivate the pathogens, there are 3 major ways: ventilation, UVGI, and air purification. So ventilation, that makes sense, right? Common sense. If you dilute the air of viruses with clean air, fresh air, then the chances of getting viral load is lower then, right? So that's common sense. But there are practical reasons ventilation cannot be done well in many places. For example, natural ventilation require good, well, first of all, you need to have a window. Secondly, the outdoor condition typically has to be good. In wintertime, you don't want to do opening a window all the time. Mechanical ventilation also is an effective way with good filtration system inside, but upgrading or is the time consuming labor cost and money cost. UVGI, it's basically ultraviolet UVC lighting. The lighting is very effective in killing viruses or bacteria, but the problem is it can also harm people. So if people are in the space, it cannot be, most of the studies have suggested UV light should not be shine on people's skin. It can cause skin cancer and other harmful effects. So it's effective, but you should use it when people are not there. That's what New York City subway is doing. So air purification, let's dive into more on air purification. What are the typical technologies, as Paul and Isaac mentioned? We have reviewed most of the major types of filtration systems and how are they treating the bacteria and viruses. So I'm not going to read this table, it's a big table, but I think I want to point out 2 things. One is the difference between capturing the particles versus deactivating the virus that's attached to the particles or the virus itself floating around in the air. That's the 2 different concepts. Capturing is great, but deactivating is better. The second point I want to point it out, besides what Paul and Isaac already pointed out on the particle size, is the testing report, is how efficient a solution can remove particles is different from the mechanism of that system. Yes, a lot of systems, a lot of technology can deactivate the virus and the small particles, but each product is different, and each product in each application is different. The best way to go around that is to have the testing report showing the efficiency in a standard way. There are standard ways of testing an air purification system. See how, given a same size of room, how long does it take for removing these things? Those efficiency testing reports are key. You have to asking for the report. That's the second point I want to make. So that summarizes our work on looking for different solutions, evaluating them, and finding the solution. So these are the air purification technology specifically to viruses and bacteria and pathogens, basically. But the benefits of air purification is much more beyond just the pandemic. So basically, the PM 2.5, the VOCs, all of those things removing from the air have long-term health benefits to students. For example, asthma, allergy, these are key issues for school children, day in, day out. The statistics is very obvious. It's one of the leading cause of lost school days for children. EPA studies also showing, apart from physical health, the better air quality also increases students' ability to learn, the test scores, the productivity of school staff, and other long-term benefits. Meaning, we all are dealing with the pandemic right now, and that's why we invested in this solution. But the benefit of our small investments right now is gonna last. It's gonna continue to benefit our students, our staff, our teachers. So it's long-term benefits for a small time investment. So to summarize what Isaac and Paul has mentioned on our product review process. So over the past 4 years, we have reviewed about 600 products across many different categories: air quality, cleaning supplies, coating, furnishing, water, lighting, and we separate different categories into different product types, and then we draft product position statements. Basically, these are the facts and studies and regulations and standards and codes on different types of products. Then we derive product criteria based on these position statements. Okay, what are the pros and cons? What are the health benefits? What are the health risks? What are the practical implications? Then we do day in, day out product review of material safety, the functionality, the marking claims, the user experience, how well it's being used in practical solutions against those product criteria. So that's how we select different types of products and then put it into use into our partners and our clients' places. So this summarizes that process. So I think that's all from me. These are the citations reference we looked for in the slides. And
Jie, this has been absolutely wonderful. Thank you. One of the things I want to ask is whether or not you would have us, if you would share those slides with the group afterwards. Yes, Paul is saying yes. Okay, that's great. Because in addition to it being captured on the video, and you could stop sharing your screen, that would be great. We will definitely, so everybody, you will get those slides as part of your follow-up, which is fantastic. And thank you. That was an incredible presentation. Paul, did you want to say something before questions?
Yeah, perfect. Jay, Isaac, thank you guys. And Nancy, I think it's important that we'll also get the actual specific product information. You know, the images of the product, the size, the specs. I know there's a lot of science here, and I think we all have a good foundation as to how we go about our process and the whys. I'm sure from a practical lens, everyone on this phone is also kind of saying, okay, I get it. I get their science. Give me more of the what, okay? I'd like to see the product. I'd like to know how often the filter needs to be changed. So let's just get into a few practical kind of elements here for you guys, so we can then take some questions or what have you. But you know,
do that. I would say let some of the questions I was going to ask have to do with that. I've grabbed them from the chat. If you can do that fast, we'll do a kind of a lightning round of a few of the questions, and then I'll have you answer the other ones afterwards post call.
Great. Yeah. So I'm going to spend like 1 or 2 minutes here, but you know, look, you're talking about the size of a small fan. Okay. 1.5 feet by 2 feet. You know, the product has different sizes. The coverage area ranges from 600 square feet up to 3,000 square feet in terms of the standalone units. You've got also induct and inline solutions for a 1 million square foot building. But back to the practical, you know, when you're talking about a living room, a bedroom, a hotel room, senior housing, obviously school classrooms. In the case of New York City, with some of the larger classrooms, they're putting one device on each side of the room. Isaac made a very important point, guys. Induct and inline solutions, you're not necessarily getting down to the acute point of concern where people are. The closer you can get to people, these can be placed on the floor, placed on a desk, Wall mounted, if you want more permanency. Filters, 1 year, okay? Once a year, the filter needs to be changed. And Isaac can get into some details as to why, but you're talking about anywhere between a $70 to a $95 filter change cost, okay, annually. And again, on a device that is a couple $100 in terms of the initial input. The math is interesting. When you consider a school classroom, for instance, and guys, as mentioned, we will go one classroom at a time. We all on this call went to school somewhere. Call your middle schools, call your high schools, call your colleges, what have you. We have been able to procure so much product that we're able to price this down to, as same price for someone ordering a couple of units versus a lot of units. So the supply chain cost reduction is a big part of what we do also as far as the aggregation engine. But, when you consider the filter change, here's the math, 26 kids per classroom. Okay, consider what this costing is, even if you put 2 devices, which gets you a fantastic turn in coverage. Guys, we're talking about less than $10 per student. There's a massive philanthropic angle here, okay? What we've had is some school systems say, we just don't have the money. We're talking about the cost of, 1 or 2 lunches. It's funny because I said something to New York City public school systems, like, guys, don't take this the wrong way, but let's announce National Skip Lunch Day, okay? 1 day next year. And you're getting close to the type of numbers that would be required to solve a very, very big problem. But, when you think of parents saying, listen, I'll just pay it. I'll pay it for my class, my kid's class, what have you. There might be an angle there as well. But we're working at the DOE level with the larger municipalities, at the county level, and at the school system level, and then individual schools themselves. And as mentioned before, and then I'll stop, this is not just a school solution. Hotel rooms, senior living rooms, this product works in any kind of space. Okay.
So one of the that's absolutely amazing, and you're answering a whole lot of the questions. So I appreciate that very, very much. Mostly people want to know how soon they can order it, but the question is it portable? Could I get one of those? And Mary Goslow asked this question. I had the same question. I'm about to fly. Can I get one of these? Take it with me? Bring it to a hotel? How about that? How portable is this?
You could. All you need is a plug, plug in. It's, again, a 40-watt light bulb type of charge. The question is just carrying it. It's an interesting idea with the travel cases. Isaac, what is the exact size of the compact, the smallest unit?
Pretty close to what you had said, about 1.5 feet tall. I think it's like a foot deep and 1 foot wide, something like that.
And they're light.
Yeah, it's small, easily travelable to bring to a hotel or Airbnb if you're going somewhere. On a plane, a little bit different. I have actually heard of people using air purification systems on planes, interestingly enough. But
yeah, there was a question of whether it would work on a plane. I mean, obviously you couldn't really. I mean, maybe you could plug it in and have it sort of in your seat area. I mean, I don't know.
The issue is just the outlet. We're talking MTA. We're talking buses, fleets of buses, subways. I mean, again, you're talking about any enclosed space. The unit itself doesn't care what kind of room it's in. So if it's enclosed and there's power, it'll work.
And cleaning it, maintaining it, is it dangerous to change the filter?
Great question. Go ahead, Isaac.
It is not. It actually, so what happens with this technology, because it does have a positively charged media, there is a high voltage conversion on that device. But what happens is there's a safety lock. Anytime the door is opened, anytime the device itself is going to be maintained and filters are going to be changed, it's going to turn off. So very simple, literally open the butterfly latch, if you will. Open the door, pull the filter out, put the new filter in, close it, and you're ready to go.
And that great question, by the way, was Deborah Enzenbacher's. I'm not going to take credit for it. And and additionally to that, is it just air purification, or does it also do something to the surfaces?
Yeah, no, this is not. Go ahead, Isaac.
Yeah, this particular device is air purification. Ultimately, if you're removing aerosolized particles, you are obviously assisting fomite transmission or droplets which may reside on a surface, but this specific technology is for removing aerosolized particles.
And Nancy, to that point, let's talk about surfaces real quick. Here's the bad news is SARS-CoV-2 particles highly contagious. The good news is they're easy to kill. I mean, you know, soap and water. People are going, we believe, way too far with this deep disinfecting and cleaning, what have you. You can clean surfaces. It's really not, you know, killing the virus. It's how often can you clean? And it's that intermittent time in between whereby, as Jay said, you have a contaminated surface with people. And the other thing with, you know, UV, some of these devices may work great without people in the room. The problem is transmission occurs when people are in the room. Yeah, but this is really that fundamental core air issue. And to Isaac's point, the cleaner the air is and constantly cleaning, the less a contaminated surface will be as well, because they drop onto the surface.
Yeah. And I'll quickly acknowledge that we're really focused on aerosolized particles that are between 0.5 micron and probably around 2 micron. And Jay can correct me if I'm wrong there. These are the aerosolized particles that are more prone to move about a room and become airborne for longer periods of time. I think the range of particle sizes that are emitted from breathing, singing, talking are around 0.5 micron to 12 micron. A lot of these droplets fall to the surface, but we have recognized that these aerosolized particles do linger. You have cross-contamination with people in and out of a room, and you obviously have transmission much long or farther than 6 feet, which is the typical range that we would look at otherwise.
So you're talking speaking, sneezing, coughing, these are
Yeah, and we, you know, I think a very early study obviously was recognized in the church choir with singing and aerosolized particles that, you know, you can breathe out 40,000 particles. And Jay, please correct me if I'm wrong again here, when singing by comparison to just breathing, which is around 5,000 particles. So talking, especially when we think about classrooms with a teacher, if we can, again, localize a device near the front of the room where the teacher is speaking, that's very important when we analyze an installation.
Can you talk about the efficacy versus UVC, far UVC lighting?
Yep. You want
to? Sure. Jay, jump in as well here. You know, UVC devices, Paul just mentioned one of the most critical elements here of failure in a way, or in a sense, based on the transmission of this particular virus. It's a respiration-borne illness. So you cannot really use these UV devices where people reside or where people occupy a space. When used in a duct fashion, you know, obviously we are relying on particles traveling a long distance, first of all. But number two, we just do not see the efficacy that translates from laboratory testing into a real world environment, because air velocity within ductwork is so fast, and ducts come in so many different sizes. So we do not see the efficiency and efficacy that we would want to see from a particle removal perspective. A, there is no particle removal, but B, an efficacy standpoint to actually deactivate the virus.
Brendan Bowers had a few really good questions throughout this. And again, you guys, I'm going to ask you guys to answer all of them afterwards, the ones we don't get to. But when you put these devices in a room, does it, is it a problem to have, let's say, a humidifier or a dehumidifier, other like an air conditioner? Let's say you're in Florida. How do they interface with other things?
That's a really good question. And you know, it's important to recognize that different temperatures, different humidity levels, different ventilation rates in all sorts of spaces. You know, we spoke with Miami-Dade Public Schools. We sold units to them. We've obviously spoken with Boston and New York City. Very different climates there. And as we move towards the winter months, especially in the north, we recognize that ventilation is a little bit more difficult while retaining, you know, thermal comfort indoors. These systems work very well in conjunction with other devices. You know, obviously, there's a lot of studies on humidity, and humidity alone, its benefit towards reducing the amount of aerosolized particles within a space and reducing transmission rates. That's another critical element for ventilation, and making sure that fresh air ventilation, either through mechanical systems or windows, does occur. But, you know, from our perspective and our review of the research, air purification as a means to reducing transmission is also an extraordinarily valuable input to that extent.
Do these products get approved by the CDC, or does anybody, is there a body that governs this? Anne-Marie has asked me that privately, but had the same thought. And then I want to just get to a couple of final comments and questions.
Another great question that we get a lot. The EPA, the CDC, they do not specifically govern this technology, air purification technology broadly. There are industry standards that are available. There are a lot of test requirements that are available, which device manufacturers will go obtain. UL 867 is a very well-known test for ozone emission of an air cleaning device. ASHRAE 52.2, MPPS testing. I'm saying a lot of scientific nomenclature there from a testing perspective, but yes, there's industry standards, but as far as EPA or CDC, they do not govern that.
Does this work all over the world? Alicia wants to know.
Yes, it does. Yeah, CDC, EPA, they don't govern air filtration in general, not particularly anything about this product. And yes, this is just, 110, 220 conversion, what have you. This does work anywhere.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got 2 minutes left. And one thing I want to say is that when I spoke to Paul about this, he generously offered to give us for our summit at the Breakers, the part that is in person. And as you know now, we're a hybrid event. So we are in person at the Breakers, and we are also virtual. And I hope all of you who cannot make it to Florida will join us virtually. Paul offered to give us whatever systems we would like to have at the Breakers. I'm going to take you up on that officially in front of everybody. We do have far UVC lighting. I think the combination is probably going to be remarkable. We have, smaller rooms where there's like a board meeting or a special ambassador lunch. I'm going to reach out to you guys and get what we need sent down to the Breakers, and then we can talk about it.
Happy to do it.
And I cannot thank you enough for that offer.
And Nancy, you'll get the bigger units and the smaller units. So yeah, we'll go through the configuration.
Okay, that's fantastic. I could not be more excited for so many reasons, because I'll be at the Breakers. I also want to say that I want to invite you guys back. We are going to pause the master classes until January because of the summit and holidays and everything else. This has been so enormously valuable, and the impact, I think, on the industry and the world is really, really great. And so I want to work with you on marketing this a little bit differently and getting even more people all over the world involved in hearing this. I think it's just really important. And you guys did a fantastic job on presenting this. I'm so appreciative. The last thing that I always ask every masterclass person, and I'm going to, Paul, ask you to answer these questions as the founder and CEO. What keeps you up at night, and what are you optimistic about?
Great, Nancy. Great questions. What keeps me up at night? I think what keeps me up at night is the missed opportunity to educate and bring clarity. People are confused. They can't trust science. They can't trust different sides of science. They don't know what to think. They don't know what to believe. There are factual approaches to this. And so what keeps me up at night is not going as broad as we possibly can. And when I mean broad, I mean 7 billion people on this rounded sphere, understanding elements like this. So I'd say that's the angst, but we are getting the message out there. And then what am I excited about? Zooming back out from what we talked about in the beginning. Look, this sucks. Sorry for my language. It's a terrible time for everybody. If we can take one good thing out of this, again, is that awareness and elevation of the notion that we can elevate what surrounds us, not just from a health and safety standpoint. Lighting, thermal, acoustics, biophilic elements, 70% of all chronic disease is caused by what surrounds us, our surrounding environmental and social conditions. Guys, everyone on this call, 5% of your health outcomes are genetic. You can't do anything about that. 20% is your lifestyle. What you eat, what you drink, how much you exercise. The rest, up to 70% of chronic health outcomes have to do with our surrounding environmental and social conditions. The air we breathe, the water we drink, the lighting, the thermal, the acoustics, the people we're exposed to. So I think that's the opportunity to make sure that we can pay attention to elevating what surrounds us. And that'll bring a more holistic approach to your guys' mission, which is elevating well-being.
Paul, thank you so much. Thank you all. Susie, I'll give you the last word, and then I'll say everybody can unmute after Susie and give you a round of applause, which you richly deserve.
Thank you, Nancy, and thank you, team, Paul. This was real. I learned so much. I've got notes, and I am glad, Nancy, that you are talking about next year, because there's certainly more to do. And the point being that collaborative, we can get a lot more done than any one company or any one place can do on their own. Yeah. So we're all about the collaboration. And I do encourage everyone to unmute yourselves. And I would like to give the three of you a hand.
Thank you, Paul, Isaac.
Bravo.
Thank you.
Incredible.
Thanks so much. Good job, Paul and Jie. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
Wonderful.
Thank you.